And we're live. Welcome to the podcast, everybody. This is Live with Tim O'Shea. We're live, but we're not really live, but we're live. And I'm your host, Tim O'Shea. This podcast is going to be mostly about sports, but eventually I think we'll dive into other topics, pop culture, music, news that's going on in the world, maybe even dabble into politics. I don't really know. Just kind of starting this out, and I'm really excited about it. And eventually we're going to have guests on, maybe even a co-host down the road. So stay tuned for more of that. But thank you for listening to our inaugural episode. So like I said, this podcast is going to be mostly about sports. Start with the NFL playoffs this weekend. The divisional round just finished. We're on to Championship Sunday coming up. We're going to go over the AFC divisional games first. So Ravens and Texans. The Ravens just took care of business, 34-10. You kind of saw that coming. A lot of people were saying that the Ravens were going to be sloppy because they had the bye. Maybe they were going to have some rust on them, but that just wasn't the case. The Texans just looked a little inexperienced in that stage, but the Texans had a great season. Without a doubt, one of the better rookie seasons of all time with C.J. Stroud, but the Texans really just couldn't do anything, especially on offense. They just kind of looked stagnant the whole game. Baltimore, that team is really good. They're really looking good, especially going into Championship Sunday against the Chiefs, who we'll talk about in a second. But, this Ravens team just has a different dynamic to them. They're really solid on defense. They're really solid on offense. One of the best offenses in the league, one of the best defenses in the league, and we just haven't seen that in a while with a team so balanced and so aggressive on both ends. And they really look good. They really, really look good. And being the number one seed, it means that the road to the Super Bowl is going to go through Baltimore. And I don't think people realize how tough of a place to play Baltimore is. That's a really good fan base. The atmosphere there is great. And that's a stadium and that's a fan base that really, they might not be Bills Mafia popular, but they got a lot of love for that team in Baltimore. So I think that's a really tough place to play, and I think that's going to factor into next week's game. So they took care of business. I really think that the defense is going to have to carry this team. I think Lamar Jackson's going to win the MVP. I think everyone knows that without a doubt, and they're comfortable. They know they're the best team. Jim Harbaugh was in the locker room after the game dancing around, having a good time. You love to see that out of a coach. Jim Harbaugh, probably a Hall of Fame coach. He's already got one Super Bowl, been there before. I really like this Ravens team. I really do. I think that the defense is going to have to carry him, though, because I think Lamar is prone to having games where he will just he just won't be Lamar. He'll just have an off game, and I think he's prone to that, and we've seen that so far, and he's hot right now, so that slow game is coming up, and it might be next week, it might be the Super Bowl, it might not come yet, but I think that's something to keep an eye on. I think this defense with Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen is going to have to really carry this team if they want to win the Super Bowl. So the Ravens took care of business there, 34-10. As we move on to the Chiefs and the Bills, and what a game this was. What a game this was. And I love that everyone's making the Brady, Peyton Manning comparisons to Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. It's fantastic. It's great. I love it. It's really, especially with social media now, because I think ESPN has always been on top of it, but social media wasn't really as big as it was now when Brady and Manning were in their primes. So this is a really cool dynamic we got going on. And as football fans, you're really lucky to see this. A quarterback that might be the best quarterback of all time when it's all said and done, Patrick Mahomes, facing Josh Allen, who's a specimen at that position that we just really haven't seen before. This was a great game leading up. The hype to this game was great. Bills Mafia, man, they are insane. I think that if the Bills Mafia keeps losing the way they are, I feel like at some point they're just going to create they're actually going to become a mafia. They're actually going to become an organized criminal organization. They were throwing themselves into a hole to win games. I don't know if you guys saw this, but the lead up to that game, the biggest story was the Bills Mafia throwing, quote unquote, sacrificing themselves into a pit. It's the ground being broken for the new stadium they're building across the street. It's a ginormous ditch. And apparently, throughout the last couple games, rumor has it that someone has been a Bills fan was throwing themselves into the dish, quote unquote, sacrificing themselves, and the Bills were winning games. So this is a fan base that will die for their team. I think that if the Bills fans, if they keep getting the notoriety they're getting through social media, I think they actually might create an organized criminal organization at some point, maybe taking out Patrick Mahomes' knees. I don't know. At some point, I think that this might be the case because the Chiefs took care of business. They won 27-24 in heartbreaking fashion if you're a Bills fan. Absolutely heartbreaking fashion. And now everyone was saying that this was Tyler Bass's fault. I don't think so. Yes, you had an opportunity at the end of the game, but you play in Buffalo, New York in the dead of winter. It is 20 degrees outside with wind. You can't have that game come down to the kicker. You know that that's not the way you want that game to happen. But really, the Bills shouldn't have won that game. They didn't do anything that game that told me as a fan watching it that they should have won that game. The Chiefs ran all over them. They had over 140 yards rushing on the ground. Isaiah Pacheco did whatever he wanted against them. Patrick Mahomes is great in the playoffs. You know he's great in the playoffs. He's starting to come on now. This team kind of looked sloppy towards the end of the regular season. Now they're starting to look like the old Chiefs offense a little bit. Not with Tyreek, not as dynamic, but they're not making mistakes. Travis Kelce's getting more involved. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing from the Chiefs offense. But the Bills just got outcoached again. This happens every year. The media, I'm seeing ESPN and all these outlets talking about how much is Josh Allen to blame. It's all on Josh Allen and it's all on Tyler Bass for missing the kick. No. They got outcoached. Sean McDermott is a defensive-minded head coach, and he's built a great team in Buffalo. He has. But when it comes to facing Andy Reid in the playoffs, he just cannot beat him. He can't. There was a play late in the fourth quarter, I believe, where they ran a fake punt with Damar Hamlin on their own 30. You're giving up the game at that point. Patrick Mahomes they got bailed out with that touchback. The Bills got a lucky touchback as one of the fumble rolled into the end zone, but from one of the Chiefs players. But I mean, come on. What is that call? You're giving up a 2-touchdown lead. They were already down one score. So now you're giving Patrick Mahomes 30 yards to work with 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter. He's going to score. The chances of that are probably like 70-80%. Come on. That's a bad call. That's a bad call. And then they had a big drop from Stephon Diggs, who's kind of a problem for them all season in the locker room. Whenever I see him in the media, he's always talking about not getting a lot of targets, even though he's been one of the most targeted wide receivers since he's made that move to Buffalo. Drops a big pass. They're one of the best balls I've ever seen in my life thrown by Josh Allen. And instead of turning his hands to catch the ball, he tries to kind of baby cradle it, and it goes right through his hands. That's not how you're taught to catch it as a wide receiver. And those are some big plays that I think the Buffalo Bills missed, and I just don't think their defense was that great. It wasn't great at all in the last game. They had injuries to Taylor Rapp, a couple of big-time linebackers that were important to that defense, so I will give them that. Gabe Davis, the wide receiver, was also out, so I will give them that. They were suspect to a couple of injuries, but I really don't think this comes down to Josh Allen. This doesn't come down to Josh Allen at all. Him and Patrick Mahomes went back and forth, and it was going to come down to who was going to make the mistake. And really neither of them did. It was the coaching that made the mistake. That Damar Hamlin play really should have solidified the game for the Chiefs. The Bills got bailed out, and then it came down to Tyler Bass at the end of the game, which you never want that to happen in Buffalo. So we move to the NFC with the 49ers and Green Bay. Now, let me tell you something. Jordan Love is not Aaron Rodgers. He is not Brett Favre yet. He looks good. I don't think he looks as good as CJ Stroud does right now. or if you want to compare him to someone like that. But he looks good. And I like that he's in a good organization like Green Bay, who knows what to do with young quarterbacks and good quarterbacks. Not a lot of organizations could handle that. So I really do like Jordan Love. I'm a fan of Jordan Love. I think that the Packers are going to be good and in the NFC North hunt for a while. But I'm seeing all the comparison videos on social media to how he slings it like Brett Favre did, and he's the next Rodgers, he's the second coming. Let's hold our horses, because if you look at the first half of the season, no one was saying that. No one was saying that. And I think the Packers need to get some more weapons on offense. I mean, they got Aaron Jones, but I mean, Dontavion Wicks, Romeo Doubs, these are the guys that he's going to be thrown to for the next couple of years. I don't see it. Christian Watson was pretty disappointing this season. You need some more weapons. You need some more weapons on the offensive side of the ball. If you're the Packers, I think they go into the draft looking to get a wide receiver. But the 49ers, this was a close game, 24-21. I'm not going to say they took care of business, but I've been seeing a lot of slander on Brock Purdy as well. So kind of the opposite. Love lost and is getting a lot of love, no pun intended. But Brock Purdy won the game, but everyone's saying he's a fraud, he's this, he's that, he's that. Listen, you're going to have games where the offense looks stale. It looks stalemated through 3 quarters of that game. It really did. It looked stalemated. Brock Purdy didn't look sharp. They were coming off a bye. I think they had a little rust. Like, this team is a juggernaut. We forget, it's so recency biased, and Brock Purdy did what he had to do. You're not getting Brock Purdy to throw for 400 yards a game. That's not why you brought him to San Francisco. He's a system quarterback. Everyone knows he's a system quarterback. He was the last pick in the draft. All right? They got lucky with a guy who can manage the offense really, really, really well. Him and I would say Tua Tagovailoa, like, I think those guys are kind of in the same boat. You get a guy, I'm trying to think of another one, maybe like Kirk Cousins, who I would say Kirk Cousins has a little bit more arm dynamic than both of them, but at the same time, kind of game managers. And he managed the game well. At the end of the game, what was he called on to do? He was called on, drive him down the field, score a touchdown. And that's what he did. So yes, he didn't look great, but he did what he was asked to do, and that's manage the game, and he did that well. 49ers come out on top of that one. They move on to the NFC Championship game. They're going to host a home game. We move on to the Detroit Lions versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Detroit going to their first NFC Championship game since 1991. The Lions took care of business, 31-23. A little controversy at the end of this game. Todd Boyles, the Buccaneers head coach, had a timeout with about, I think it was like 40 seconds left, and then chose just not to take it because the Lions would have been forced to kick a field goal on their last possession instead of taking a knee, but he just let the clock run out. I think that's horrible. I think that's just giving up on your team, and I think that's horrible. It's the playoffs. You use that timeout. I don't think this is getting enough attention by the media. It's more getting attention by amateur journalists and social media influencers online, on like TikTok and social media apps. I haven't heard this once on any ESPN, anything like that. So I really don't understand that call. And he went out and he was asked about it in the press conference, and he said that he did not think, and I'm paraphrasing here, he did not think that they had enough time to do anything. If he takes that time out, the Lions are forced to kick a field goal. It's about a 45-yard field goal. If they miss that field goal, they get the ball near midfield with about 30 seconds left to try and score a touchdown. I mean, you're throwing a Hail Mary that's definitely within Baker's distance. I don't know why. I don't know why he would just leave that. But regardless, the Detroit Lions come out on top on that one. They take care of business. Baker, let me talk about Baker Mayfield a little bit. I want to give my flowers to Baker Mayfield. Dude was traded, given up on, free agent, and I'm a Baker guy. I am. Not a lot of teams in the league can rally around a quarterback like that. And listen, he's not the most talented QB, but man, he can sling it. And when you can sling it and take chances, you're going to get guys to rally around him. And if you can make plays, good things will happen. You saw that happen to the Bucs towards the end of the season this year. They rallied, got some wins. snuck into the playoffs, won the division. I mean, I really think that Baker went from a guy who was kind of a bridge quarterback to I think that the Buccaneers seriously have to talk about re-signing him for maybe a 2 or 3 year deal. I would love to see Baker with the Bucs for a while. I would love to see him make that his home, and he can win games. The guy can just win games. Is he going to win a Super Bowl for you? I don't know. I think if he gets hot, he can. I think we've seen worse quarterbacks win Super Bowls, so I really like him on the Bucs. I'm a big Baker guy, so kudos to Baker Mayfield. 1 game away from the NFC Championship game. I think the Lions on the other end I think they have the identity of a Super Bowl team. And when I say that, if you look at some of the great teams in NFL history, they just have an identity. Remember, like Legion of Boom, the Steel Curtain, the Greatest Show on Turf, and just to name a few. But, the Lions don't have a catchy name, but they just have an identity, and that's grit. And they're going to grit their way to the Super Bowl. I love Dan Campbell, his press conference when he was talking about biting kneecaps and punching people. I love it. I love Dan Campbell. I mean, this guy has completely changed. He went in and said, we're going to change the culture, and we're going to have football players. We're going to have guys. We're not going to have divas. We're going to have football players. If you don't love to play football, we're going to cut you, and we're going to get guys, even if they're a 5th-round guy, undrafted guy, free agent, whoever. We're just going to get guys that love to play football, and it works. It works. You need the perfect formula, and right now the Lions have the perfect formula. I think they could do it. I really think, sometimes you have Cinderella stories, and the emotion kind of gets in the way of logic, and I think in a little bit it does here because the 49ers are a tough team that they're going to have to beat. That's going to be a tough team to have to beat on the road, but if they do that, I really don't think there's a team that can beat them in this league. If they make it to the Super Bowl, if they can beat the 49ers next week, I don't see this team losing in the Super Bowl. But like I said, they have to beat the 49ers, and I don't know if they do that, but I really want to see them do that. It happened last week. The Green Bay Packers proved that you could run the ball against the 49ers, right? Aaron Jones had over 100 yards rushing, and Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery have looked great all year. That dynamic duo is great. Yeah, David Montgomery, who's just going to pound the rock. He's a workhorse back. But then you got Jahmyr Gibbs, who's going to get about 10 to 12 carries a game, but he's going to change the pace, and you're going to get at least 2 or 3 electric plays out of him, explosive plays. I think that if the Lions, I would say the Tim's tools for the Lions to win next game is to hold the ball. Time of possession is going to be key. Run the ball and no turnovers. That's how they win that game. They do that, I think they come out of there on top. And it's been fun to watch them this year. And I haven't seen a team take on an identity like that in a very long time, probably since the old Ravens with Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and those guys. That team was just gritty as well. So we're going to move on to the NFC Championship game. All right. We're going to talk a little predictions. All right. So the Chiefs versus the Ravens. Who else? Who else would be in the AFC Championship game other than the Kansas City Chiefs? We've seen it the last 6 years. And to be honest, guys, you're going to hate me for it. I think the Chiefs pull it out. Now, I know I was giving the Ravens their flowers a little bit ago, but I just think I don't know. I just think the Chiefs win it. There's really no other logic to it. The Ravens have a better defense. They have a better offense. They have better special teams. But for some reason, I just can't count out Patrick Mahomes. I really would like to see Lamar get a Super Bowl. He's going to take home the MVP regardless. But I think that I think the Chiefs just pull it out. And I think the NFL wants the Chiefs to pull it out too. I feel like the NFL is kind of rooting for the Chiefs, obviously, because of the Taylor Swift situation. And yeah, that's a funny thing to keep saying. But for really, if you look at it, Taylor Swift being a part of the Super Bowl brings such an audience to the game. These Swifties, quote unquote, who might not watch the Super Bowl. Now they'll tune in to see the drama. This is unfolded like a reality TV show, which technically it is reality TV, but it really has unfolded in a way where it's like, oh, you gotta, what's the new Travis and Taylor Swift news? What's this and that? Oh, how Travis doing the game? Like, oh, we gotta watch the game to see how many times she gets on TV. This really has turned into a saga that nobody saw coming, and Not for that reason, but I think the NFL knows that it'll make so much money because it's really just turned into a business. I mean, it's always been a business, the NFL, but I feel like with the Peacock stuff this year and the TV subscriptions and the TV revenue, how they're making their money, I just really see them being a little bit greedy here. And one of the moves that they made to back up this point is Sean Smith. If you don't know, Sean Smith is an NFL referee, all right, and he is the referee that they just appointed to the Ravens and Chiefs game within the last couple days. So they appointed this guy to the game. And this is a quote from Warren Sharp, Football Insider on Twitter. Road teams win at the #1 highest rate with him, Sean Smith, reffing. Road teams, the Kansas City Chiefs, win at the #1 out of all referees, the #1 highest rate with him reffing. He calls penalties on home teams more than any other ref does. Does anybody at the NFL look and say, hey, maybe they'll figure this out. Maybe we shouldn't put this guy in because people are going to make excuses about it. I feel like the NFL does this on purpose. They sneak him in and they're just acting like, oh, you know, no one's gonna see that. But obviously everyone does, and it's just, I don't know, man. It's stuff like that. It's just little things like that where it's like, why? It's the NFL does this, and I feel like they just poke you. They're just poking a bear. Why do that? But anyway, that's besides the point. I think the Chiefs pull this one out. I can't go against Patrick Mahomes. I think the Chiefs make it to the Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens after that. But going to the Lions and the 49ers, I think that if you take emotion out of it, I think, like I said, the Lions, everyone wants the Lions to win. But if you take emotion out of it, I think that the 49ers are just too much. They've been there before. They're experienced. I just don't see the 49ers losing this game. They're a 7-point favorite. It pains me to say, but I think the Cinderella run ends here for the Lions. But if there's a team that can do it, I think it is the Lions. I just can't see the 49ers losing. So I think the 49ers get it done. I just think they have a better team than the Lions. I think that Detroit, it's been a great story all year, but I just don't think they have the talent to match the 49ers, especially on defense. I think that the 49ers offense is just way too dynamic. I think Christian McCaffrey has a great game. Deebo Samuel is out, so that is something to monitor. But I just think the 49ers take care of business, and we have Super Bowl 57, which is a rematch between Patrick Mahomes and the San Francisco 49ers in his first Super Bowl. He played them when they had Jimmy Garoppolo. You have Chiefs, which is the most notorious team in the league with Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes. And then you have San Francisco, a California team, one of the best franchises in the NFL, and you have them facing off in Las Vegas. This is a showdown. This is what the NFL wants. This is a moneymaker right here. It's probably going to be the most watched game in NFL history or Super Bowl history at least. So Chiefs 49ers, I think that's going to be the Super Bowl. And I just wanted to mention one thing. We talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, and they have 3 surefire Hall of Famers. They got Patrick Mahomes, they got Travis Kelce, and they got Andy Reid. I think we need to start throwing Harrison Butker into the mix as a potentially future Hall of Famer. And I'll tell you why. Harrison Butker in that game versus the Buffalo Bills in the divisional round made a 47-yard field goal that I said, wow, that was a pretty tough kick. But Harrison Butker always comes through for the Kansas City Chiefs. When you're watching a Kansas City Chiefs game, when's the last time you went, but their kicker sucks? He won't make this. You subconsciously go, they got Butker. They got Butker. He's going to nail this. He should be in the conversation for potential Hall of Famer. And I'm going to throw this out right now. I don't think anyone else has said it, and he's only been in the league for about 7 years. But let me show you his resume so far. So he's had the game-winning kick in the AFC Championship game, send the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. He had the game-winning kick in the Super Bowl to win it for the Kansas City Chiefs last year. In the game, which is renowned as one of the greatest games of all time, Bills versus Chiefs, a couple of years ago when the Chiefs had the ball with 13 seconds left, they go down. Who kicked the game-tying field goal? That wasn't an easy field goal. That was a very long field goal in Kansas City in the winter. That was Harrison Butker. Without him kicking that field goal, that game is forgotten in NFL history. Or the Bills win. So that changes history a lot. He's hit a 62-yarder. I feel like all the great kickers got to hit a 60-yarder. He already has 2 Super Bowl victories. Second all-time in career field goal percentage. Only behind Justin Tucker, who is notoriously known as probably the greatest kicker of all time. Him and Adam Vinatieri are basically 1 and 2, or 1A and 1B. So he's only behind Justin Tucker in all-time field goal percentage. 7th in playoff field goals already. 7th all-time. The only active player in front of him is Mason Crosby, who's been in the league since my dad played football. Okay? Mason Crosby, I didn't even know he was in the league again. A long-time kicker for the Green Bay Packers, 7th. So when the Kansas City keeps making the playoffs, he might end up being the all-time field goal or all-time player field goal leader in the playoffs. Harrison Butker should get more notoriety and should be looked at as a potential Hall of Famer. He is one of the greatest kickers of all time. You cannot tell the story of the NFL, even in his short career, without Harrison Butker. I think that he doesn't get the notoriety that he deserves. I don't think that he gets the credit that he deserves for being such a catalyst for this team and such an important cog in the Kansas City Chiefs machine. So I'm giving my flowers to Harrison Butker, potential future Hall of Famer in my eyes. Harrison Butker. Kid is clutch. Kid hits game-winning kicks. And you saw how hard it was to make a field goal when Tyler Bass missed it wide right. Sorry, Bills fans, had to say it wide right against the Chiefs last game. Harrison Butker nailed that right down the middle. So I just wanted to point that out and say, Harrison Butker, I'm giving you my flowers, potential Hall of Famer. So that was my hot take of the week. So for you guys that have been following my channel, my Tim O'Shea Live, it's my media channel. Please follow it, Tim O'Shea Live on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. For you guys that follow that channel, we have a dog of the week. Every week we post a dog of the week. And that's just a player who was a dog, doing something on the field, off the field, usually football, but we're going to move into different sports. But that's kind of what the overall gist of that segment is. On the podcast, we're going to have something a little different. We're going to have DAWG-House of the week. So DAWG-House of the week is going to go to a player that was the opposite of a dog. Just kind of, he's in the doghouse. That's what it says. He's just in the doghouse. All right. DAWG-House of the week goes to Karl Anthony Towns. All right, I'll tell you why. So Karl Anthony Towns, he's the center for the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have had an unbelievable season so far. They're number 2, I believe, in the West right now. But a couple days ago, they were number 1 in the West, all right, leading into a game versus the Charlotte Hornets. Karl Anthony Towns scored a career-high 62 points versus the Charlotte Hornets, but they lost. The Timberwolves lost the first-place seed in the West. After the game, Coach Chris Finch said this about Karl Anthony Towns, quote unquote, I mean, it was an absolutely disgusting performance of defense and immature basketball, said Coach Chris Finch. Karl Anthony Towns scored 62 points, but no one on the team other than Cat shot more than 11 shots. He shot it 35 times. He's getting ripped apart on social media for playing selfish basketball, being a selfish player. And he's already a character in and of itself. So Karl Anthony Towns scoring a career-high 62 points, but getting bashed by his coach and social media and sports outlets. Karl Anthony Towns, you are the DAWG-House of the week. All right, so moving on. Another segment we're going to move into is called Forgotten Player of the Week. So we're going to move this segment kind of within the season. So right now it's football season, then it's going to be basketball season and baseball season. So we're going to mix it up a little bit between those 3 sports. And Forgotten Player of the Week. You know, this is a segment this is in honor of all of the boys' nights where the guys and the dudes are just sitting around, maybe playing video games, talking sports, chopping it up, and maybe you guys like, hey, You remember this guy? Oh, man, I remember that guy. Oh, hey, what about this guy? Oh, my God, I used to love that guy. I had that guy on my fantasy team when I was 10 years old. I used to have that guy's jersey. This is what this segment honors and is motivated by. So, Forgotten Player of the Week this week's player is none other than Jonathan Stewart. He played from 2008 to 2018 for the Carolina Panthers and the New York Giants. Maybe you had Jonathan Stewart. You remember him. He was kind of a thicker running back. He was a bigger dude, bowling ball. He was a 2015 Pro Bowler when the Carolina Panthers made that run to the Super Bowl. He's rushed for over 7,000 yards with the Panthers, and he had 1 year with the Giants. Jonathan Stewart is this week's Forgotten Player of the Week. Maybe you had him on your fantasy team when you were a little younger. Maybe you had a Jonathan Stewart jersey if you're a Panthers fan. Maybe you remember him and D'Angelo Williams is another guy, right? That dynamic duo in the backfield for the Panthers for a long time. So this week's Forgotten Player of the Week, Jonathan Stewart. And I hope that made a lot of guys go, oh, nice. I remember him. Thank you guys for tuning into my inaugural podcast of Live with Tim O'Shea. This is a lot of fun. We're going to keep this going, probably get a couple episodes out a week. So stay tuned for more info. So thank you guys for tuning in and hope to see you soon.